Thank you, Tina. We're going to talk about foreign policy now. Russian President Vladimir Putin has threatened to use nuclear weapons in the conflict with Ukraine, prompting President Biden to claim that we are on the verge of Armageddon. Senator Warnock, if nuclear weapons are used, how should the United States respond? You have 60 seconds.
Well, first of all, I'm glad that we are standing up to Putin's aggression. And we have to continue to stand up, which is why I stood up to the Biden administration when it suggested that we should close the Savannah Combat Readiness Training Center. I told the president that was the exact wrong thing to do at the exact wrong time, and I'm glad that I was able to stand up with Congressman Buddy Carter and others, and we kept that training center open. I've seen up close what those service members do. They are the tip of the spear, and we have to make sure that our service members know that we have their back. We have to strengthen our allies and the NATO alliance, as we've done, and make sure we stand up to Russian aggression. Nothing could be more important.
Mr. Walker, the same question to you. If nuclear weapons are used, how should the U.S. respond? You have 60 seconds.
Well, first of all, he talked about standing up. You didn't stand up to Chuck Schumer when you could have got a helicopter company here of almost $1 billion. You let it go to New York. You didn't stand up then. You didn't stand up to Biden when he left American people and had 13 military soldiers killed in Afghanistan. You didn't stand up then. So what we can do is, Putin is a bully. And the way you beat a bully, you show strength. Well, Senator Warnock said he stood up. He not stood up to Biden. If he was standing up, he wouldn't have voted with him 96% of the time, which gave us an open border, which gave us high inflation, which gave us crime in the streets. And he's talking about standing up. He didn't stand up. He have laid down every time it came around, and you know that, Senator.
It is evident that he has a point that he tries to make time and time again. I've stood up to the Biden administration so that they could keep open this Combat Training Readiness Center, stood with our congressional delegation to do that. I've worked across the aisle time and time to get good things done for the people of Georgia. I worked with a senator from Texas to build out I-14. I worked with a Republican senator from Alabama to help Georgia farmers get their products to market. I will work with anyone and stand up against anybody I need to stand up against to get good things done for Georgia. I work for the people of Georgia.
We need to move forward to our next topic, gentlemen. Our time is running short. Both of you have strong backing from your respective parties. Senator Warnock, a simple yes or no here. You will have a chance to explain, but I'd like a simple yes or no. Would you support President Biden running for a second term in 2024?
I've not spent a minute thinking about what politicians should run for what in 2024.
Is that a yes or a no?
The answer is I have not. And maybe this is difficult. Maybe this is difficult for people to understand because that's how politicians think. I think that part of the problem with our politics right now is that it's become too much about the politicians. You're asking me who's going to run in 24? The people of Georgia get to decide who's going to be their senator in 3 days, Monday. And I hope they'll show up and vote. And I'd be honored to represent them in the Senate.
You haven't thought about it. If you can think about it now, in 2024, the president will turn 82 years old. Are you concerned about his physical and his mental fitness at that time? You have 30 seconds.
The people of Georgia hired me to represent them regardless of who's in the White House. I'm honored to do that job every single day. My dad said if somebody hires you to do a job, do the job they hired you to do. They didn't hire me to be a pundit. And I'm working every single day for hardworking families in Georgia, for our women, for our workers, and for kids like me growing up in places like Caton Homes.
Mr. Walker, former President Trump is also considering a run for the White House in 2024. If you can give me a simple yes or no answer, and we'll give you time to explain as well, would you support a Trump 2024 run?
Yes, I would. And let me tell you, President Trump is my friend. Has nothing to do with that. He's my friend. I won't leave my allies, which is what Senator Warnock and Joe Biden did in Afghanistan. They left their allies. They left their allies, and right now on a foreign stage, a lot of these people don't trust us no more. They don't trust us to be strong anymore. So they're waiting to see who's going to stand up, who's going to trust. And they have no one to trust right now because I said President Trump is my friend, and he won't stand up with Biden when yet he's voted with him 96% of the time. Let's be real.
Mr. Walker, are you concerned about the ongoing legal investigations around the country and including here in Georgia? You have 30 seconds.
Well, first of all, I would hope that Senator Warnock, he and myself being people of color, would want the scales of justice to not have a hand on it. We want the Lady Justice to be blind, but in this instance here, Lady Justice is not blind. And I said right now, with everything that is going on, what I like to do is get to what's important. What's important is protecting the border. What's important is protecting people on the street. What's important is getting this inflation down. Not what's going on there in Washington, talking about whether President Trump is guilty or not guilty. What I want to do is see due process, which is what I hope Senator Warnock and myself would love to see.
Changing topics now, we're going to move forward just to give you guys both an update that you may want to know, although the news is not great if you're a Braves fan. Right now, they're in the top of the 9th inning, Game 3, National League Division Series, down 9-1 to the Phillies. Not a great night for the Braves. Just a few weeks ago, the World Series champs, though, they did visit the White House. Their visit sparked a renewed debate about the team's name and their signature tomahawk chop. Mr. Walker, do you believe the Braves should rethink their name, their logo, or their signature cheer? You have 30 seconds.
Not at all. You know, right now, we have too many other things to be concerned about. We have people dying on the streets in Atlanta, around the country. We have people living paycheck to paycheck, can't afford food to put on their table, can't afford gas. We have Putin out there. We have China out there. We can't be concerned about whether the Braves are going to change their name. We need to be concerned about saving this country. We need to be concerned about saving the Georgia people. We need to be concerned about giving people a right to live the liberties and freedoms that the Constitution of the United States guarantees them to have.
Senator Warnock, the same question to you in regards to the Braves. Do you think they should rethink their name, their logo, or their signature cheer?
Well, first of all, I'm praying for the Braves right about now. They've got a ways to go here. Listen, the management of the Braves is meeting with our tribes, and they're having a conversation about this. And I know the folks over at the Braves organization, and I trust that they and the tribes that they're talking to will come to a place that makes sense for all involved.
Senator Warnock, we're going to go ahead and continue. We want to get a few more questions in tonight. Senator Warnock, some of your Senate colleagues have called for expanding the number of seats on the Supreme Court. In 15 seconds, quickly, sir, would you support this?
What I support.
Expanding
listen,
the seats on the Supreme Court.
I think that my job as a senator is to protect the rights of ordinary citizens. And for the first time, perhaps in my lifetime, we've seen those rights contract rather than expand, whether we're talking about the reproductive rights of women or voting rights. And I'm going to do everything I can to protect the rights of the citizens of Georgia.
Thank you, Senator Warnock. Mr. Walker, would you support expanding the number of seats on the Supreme Court? In 15 seconds, sir.
Yes, when you get in Washington, you have to become a leader. Being a leader, you have to make tough decisions. And you see on that answer there, he really didn't give you an answer. So my answer is no. I wouldn't know.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.